Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg is back on Capitol Hill today for a second round of grilling from lawmakers. Today he's testifying before the House Energy and Commerce Committee. He faced hours of questioning from a Senate Joint Committee yesterday. Facebook is facing growing pressure to protect users' privacy after Cambridge Analytica mined data from 87 million accounts. Here's Mark Zuckerberg being questioned about that today.
You had the capability to audit developers' use of Facebook user data and do more to prevent these abuses. But the problem at Facebook not only persisted, it proliferated. In fact, relatives to other types of problems you had on your platform, it seems as though you turned a blind eye to this, correct?
Congressman, I disagree with that assessment. I do think that going forward, we need to take a more proactive view of policing what the developers do. But looking back, we've had an app review process. We investigate.
But Mr. Zuckerberg, it seems to us that it seems like you were more concerned with attracting and retaining developers on your platform than you were with ensuring the security of Facebook's user data. It strikes me that there's a real trust gap here. This developer data issue is just one example. But why should we trust you to follow through on these promises when you have demonstrated repeatedly that you're willing to flout both your own internal policies and government oversight when the need suits you?
Congressman, respectfully, I disagree with that characterization. We've had a review process for apps for years. We've reviewed tens of thousands of apps a year and taken action against a number of them. Our process was not enough to catch a developer.
I see my time is almost over. I just want to say, Mr. Chairman, that to my mind, the only way we're going to close this trust gap is through legislation that creates and empowers a sufficiently resourced expert oversight agency with rulemaking authority to protect the digital privacy and ensure that companies protect our users' data.
And I want to bring in our panel now. Dan Patterson is a senior writer for Tech Republic. Jennifer Greigel is an assistant professor at Syracuse University's Newhouse School of Public Communications. And Roger Cheng, the executive editor of CNET News. Thanks once again, everyone, for being with us for day two. How would you characterize today's questioning versus yesterday's in front of the Senate?
Definitely, it's a change in it's almost a 180, right? With the Senate, we felt like a lot of the senators were a little ill-prepared. It seemed like Zuck was in control of the conversation a lot of times. Things are a little bit different. The answers here are shorter. The questions are more poignant. They're getting to the right points a lot faster. And
that question we just heard about app developers versus users, I think, is a pertinent question because it does often seem that the app developers take a big role in Facebook. Can someone explain what is the relationship of Facebook to these app developers, Dan?
Well, the historic relationship with Facebook and app developers is that you can access a tremendous amount of data using the APIs, and this stands for Application Programming Interface. Every module in Facebook, whether it's Messenger, whether it's the news feed, events, has one of these APIs. And those APIs provided data not just to outside developers, but different components of Facebook. It was real easy to lift data using those APIs and put that into your own database, your own, much like Excel, your own rows and tables on your own server well outside of Facebook's walled garden.
But Jen, does Facebook make money off of these apps? What is the advantage to having all of these apps on Facebook? Does it just increase use on the site?
It really fueled the growth of the platform. Why? Because marketers for the first time had access to all kinds of demographics and information. They wanted to build products based off of the Facebook API. And they weren't able to really get this much information from anybody else. And Facebook really harvested a large amount. So I think it was that relationship, that access to data that really fueled Facebook's growth.
And going forward, do you think the relationship with the apps will have to change, Roger?
It seems like with the policy changes they put in place, they recognize there's a problem here. They are taking the right steps in the right direction, but obviously they still have these relationships with these app developers. They are still an important part of Facebook's business model. So it's unclear just how detached they'll actually be, after all this cools down.
Right. Okay. Now the big question is regulation, right? Is there going to be regulation? How involved will Mark Zuckerberg be in crafting that regulation? He does appear to be open to it. He seems to accept that it's coming. Do you think, though, that he wants to have Congress allow him to self-regulate?
Absolutely. Self-regulation would be the best solution, not just for Mr. Zuckerberg, but for all massive Silicon Valley companies. Of course, it's not realistic. And we do know that Mr. Zuckerberg has expressed a golly shucks desire for self-regulation and for government regulation. But at the same time, he has his own lobbyists on K Street in Washington working to defang the Honest Ads Act. So they can't have it both ways. He's saying one thing at this testimony, his lobbyists are doing another thing.
And Jen, one thing that I feel has not really been addressed, or I've not yet heard it addressed, is what actually happens to this data once it's out there, right? It's all been sold to Cambridge Analytica. Where is it now? Well, he hasn't talked about that.
Yeah, and so again, the API since the beginning, until they changed it around 2015, was very open. And so once the data kind of was ported over to the apps, they were able to download it, as Dan was saying. And once data's outside the door, it's
But now
out.
he's saying that there are tens of thousands of apps that they're looking at. So how much data, how many users? This just seems like it could be the tip of the iceberg.
What really has been highlighted here is that Facebook was not doing any work to do an audit, right? Are you actually controlling the data? Are you doing what you said with it? I think, again, the work of journalists over in the UK, The Guardian and Observer, really highlighted this with Cambridge Analytica. That's why we're here today.
Right.
I mean, you saw that with Facebook basically taking Cambridge Analytica at its word that, yes, it deleted its information when actually it didn't.
Right. Now, we know that we heard Mark Zuckerberg say that Krogan took the information that he gathered on his app, which he was allowed to do, and then he sold it to Cambridge Analytica, which Mark Zuckerberg says he was not allowed to do. That violated the agreement they had with him. So is Facebook then going to sue Krogan?
You know, he was asked that question, and he kind of punted. He didn't really say, he wouldn't really commit either way as to whether or not they would seriously go after it. And I think it does speak a bit to the priorities on Mark Zuckerberg's mind, right? It's that going after that, having this blow up even further is the furthest thing he wants at this point.
The platform was designed systemically in such a way so that it would be easy to extract data, so that not just Facebook would grow, but we remember apps like Zynga, Farmville, that kind of thing, so that app developers could grow and scale using Facebook data as well. So for them to say, well, geez, they told us they deleted it. No, the entire system was systemically designed for this type of scale.
But that goes back to the question of which relationship is more important to Facebook, that of the developers or that of the users, right? Because there's a little bit of a conflict of interest there.
Well, if you see with the comments, I mean, it's clear that the growth of the platform was paramount in his mind, and privacy, I mean, it's become a large deal because it's gone public, but at this point, it's always been about the growth, right?
He also didn't know about some key class actions. He didn't really fully, communicate about the FTC enforcement. It seems like he really is focused on that growth and the product side and development, and he hasn't really looked at all the risks and the enforcement. And he's the CEO. He needs to pay attention to everything.
Do you think that was genuine when he really didn't know about these cases? I mean, again, he's not under oath here. We looked into that yesterday. We're assuming that he's telling the truth, but he's not under oath. Do you think it was genuine?
It's a statutory requirement to tell the truth here, though, today.
So he did not know about these cases, which seems pretty incredible.
I think he's punting a little bit, but I also just don't think he pays that much attention to it. I think
it's definitely not on his priority list.
It's not the priority. And look at where we are today. Look at how the company is run. Really speaks to the ethics.
One congresswoman today pointed that out, that did not seem to be a priority for him, and suggested perhaps financial penalties would make it more of a priority. Do you think that's what has to happen here, Roger? I mean, do you think that would change?
I mean, definitely, like the FTC has had certain tools to enforce companies to follow these rules. Obviously, this didn't happen in Facebook's case. So, and it's unclear whether there were any financial penalties from the FTC consent agreement. And so I think, absolutely having a financial penalty. That said, I mean, this is a company that makes billions of dollars. So whatever penalties are there, we'll see if they're actually significant
Maybe
enough.
they could think of these as incentives, financial incentives.
Yes, there you go.
Tied to their bonuses.
Mark Zuckerberg is incredibly wealthy and hundreds of billions in market cap for Facebook. $1 billion, enforcement action. I don't even think he pays attention to something like that. We need real teeth in this regulation.
And then that's what the Congress has to figure out.